Welcome to Quit to Win, the show where we explore the defining moments people had to let go of destructive pattern, limiting identity, and internal battle in order to rebuild their life with purpose and clarity. Our today's guest is Axel Meierhoefer, a retired Air Force uh, officers, entrepreneurs, real estate investor, coach, mentor, and host of the Ideal Investor podcast. Since starting his first company in 2005, Asa has built a residential real estate portfolio worth over 1.5 millions, developed the STK out of a state turnkey investment strategy, and helped countless people reach what he called time freedom point. At the moment, passive income cover your life, cover your life, and your time finally belongs to you. But beyond the portfolio and the strategy is a personal realization. As I look at the trajectory he was on and saw that the destination clearly wasn't working until he died. But that moment changed everything. His definition of success shifted, and what used to be a career became something closer to a calling. Today, we'll explore what it truly costs to keep exchanging time for money and what becomes possible when you finally stop. As a real pleasure and honor, have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. So you serve in Air Force and then build a company from the ground up in 2005. Most people with that background just keep working harder, longer, more disciplined. What was the moment to look at the trajectory and realize the destination wasn't working until you died?
Well, like you said, I was in the Air Force, I was flying, and then there comes a point where you're getting too old and your body is not working well anymore. So I retired from that and was immediately recruited into a software company. But at the same time, while I was in this transition period, I was asking people that had experience, what would you say I need to do to be successful outside of the military? And people said it's basically two things. Number one, you need to find a job with a good company. And number two, you probably need some sort of a graduate degree at your age. At the time, I was 40, so that you have a good opportunity to have a good career. So then I almost immediately got the offer for a job, and I thought it was a good job. It was a pretty high-ranking position. And I knew, okay, well, I still need to find a way to get that graduate degree. And it was just so happens that right around like 2 streets over from where the job was, there was a university that had a program that I was interested in. So I went to work during the day, and instead of driving home, I just stayed there, got some dinner, and then walked over to the university and started studying for the graduate degree. And what ultimately happened is during the day, I was studying organizational management and leadership. So during the day, I could see how does organizational management and leadership look in the real world. And at night, 3 times during the week, I went to school to learn in theory how it should look like.
Yeah.
And this thing went on for almost 5 years. Not every night, but many nights I came home and I said to my wife, you know what? What I saw this week or the last few days at work and what I'm learning at school is like literally the opposite.
Yeah.
Right. And then when I got closer to the end of the degree program and I kept whining to her, I've always felt bad that she had to take all that negative energy. And she said, if the job is so different from what you think is right and what you learned at the university, ultimately you have to do something about it. I don't want you to do this degree, think you have learned something, and then every day you go to work, you come home and you're frustrated. And I said, okay, let me think about it. Ultimately, I said to myself, okay, so I served basically the country in the military, and I tried this thing of being employed. Maybe if I really want to apply what I'm learning at school, I have to do this myself and start my own business. That's how that actually happened.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. So military service build a powerful identity around discipline, duty, and showing up. When you started thinking about a passive income and stepping off of the treadmill, did any part of that identity resist the idea?
I wouldn't say it resisted. It's more a matter of when I did that step into starting my own business, pretty much all these other systems that you oftentimes have around you, like if you're an employee in a company, it doesn't really matter whether you do it like I did after the military, or you get out of college and start, or you may even get out of high school and start a job. The thing is, there are certain systems, both from the companies and from the government, that are in place, like Social Security in the United States for your retirement, as well as like 401k, tax preferred savings plans. And so those are all systems for people who live in either the government or the regular employment system. And when you get out and you say, I do my own business, those systems are not there anymore. And you have to keep in mind, I was a single person. I said, I start my own company, employee number one, so to speak. Well, for a small company like that, there are no systems. So for me, the question was, do I really want to work? Because that's how I was thinking at the
Yeah.
time, until I die. And if the answer is no, I have to
Yeah.
come up with something where I can generate some passive income. So there comes a point sometime in the future where I can say I've accumulated enough, even without the government systems, so I can stop working and have some sort of retirement. That's how that, building a passive income portfolio started, because I realized within a few years of having my own company, if I don't do it, nobody's going to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. That was really strategic and a whole lot of things to really get to learn from that particular scenario. Yeah. So you describe reaching your own time freedom points. The moment passive income cover your own life and your time became yours. What did that day actually feel like? And was it what you expected?
No, the short answer is no. And I think the reason is the time freedom point, or the time freedom number, basically says, okay, you look at your expenses, everything that you need to cover your life, for food and for vacation and for clothing and for the family and those kind of things, and maybe a little bit of a reserve if something breaks. You average it out and you say, okay, well, what does that mean? How much money would have to come in every month from some external source? And so obviously, as I started buying real estate and started investing, I could see step by step how much money came out of those investments. So it wasn't really, okay, I bought something and then I went to sleep for 15 years and I woke up and that something has bloomed into a beautiful orchard and look at see. No, that's not how it was. It was a very gradual process. The real important thing, I would say, for the audience is the point in time is nice as a realization. But I think that what I've learned, the more important thing about it is humility, right? And I mean, you said it, and the numbers have increased even since we wrote that kind of little description. I would say my asset portfolio is probably several $1 million now. And some people, the value, if I had to
Yeah.
sell everything, some people, and that's what I mean by humility, they get a little overboard. They think, oh, now I need to buy a Ferrari or stuff like
Yeah.
that. To me, I think a really important lesson is not just I reached the number and now I know, even if I don't do anything anymore, I can continue to live the life that I have built. But you want to also not start, going out and say, oh, I need to show everybody that I've reached that
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
And so that humility is actually an important lesson that I had to learn. But coming back to your question, because it gradually evolved as I started investing and then the investments matured, it wasn't really like some, lightning strikes and suddenly you are there. It didn't happen that way.
Yeah. Amazing. Oh, this is really lovely, especially the fact that your definition of success changes. Immediately you go to that particular point and the fact that, yeah, stay humble and there's no need to prove any points. Yeah, that was really amazing. I thank you so much for sharing. So you went from building your own portfolio to teaching others to build theirs. What shifted inside you when helping others reach the time freedom points become more satisfying than reaching it yourself?
Well, one thing I learned, and I've been doing it now since 2015, so more than 10 years, and I find it quite interesting, and I think it should be inspiring for anybody watching or listening to us, is at the point where you decide, I want to take some help. Like, I'm obviously happy to help people who say, "Hey, I want to learn from Axel how he did this." But when the time comes, and whether you seek out my help or somebody else's help, and you realize I want to do something that gives me enough passive income so I can cover my life, I don't have to depend on someone else. The starting position, that's what I learned in the last 11 years, is different from person to person, right? In my case, I had my military background. I only really worked for 5 years in a regular job. And so I had almost nothing, but I have had clients who had a pretty substantial K plan because they worked from 20 to
Yeah.
40 before they ever came to me. Some people already owned their own residence. Others were still living in apartment complexes. Some people inherited or will inherit something from their family. Others have, not very good relationships with their family, and they basically have very little. I had a person recently who reached out because we conduct a cohort-based program. It's called the Abundant Money Mindset Program, for people who live in this kind of scarcity mindset and want to get out of it. So this lady reached out to me, and when I tried to establish, where are you right now? I'm not going to tell you how old she is, but she
Yeah.
said, okay, this is where I am, and I have $29,000. That's a real challenge, especially she had already quite a career. If your current status is $29,000, it is not easy to get you any kind of substantial investment portfolio that's in reasonable amount of time. I would say she probably has 15 years until she really would want it. To make something meaningful in 15 years out of $29,000 that you have accumulated over your whole lifetime is tricky, right? But my message or the answer to your question is everybody starts at a different point.
Yeah.
And what I find is really important is that you have somebody who helps you to commit. I really want to do something about it. And I first want to identify, what is my goal? Is it a certain time freedom number, like in my case, where I said my goal is the investments need to pay for my life? But your goal might be to say, I know what I have, I know what I'm going to get from the government. I need to make another $1,000 or $2,000 a month. Or your goal might be, I want to build something that my kids, my grandkids, or whoever, somebody is supposed to inherit when I'm not there. So the goal is important, and really being committed to work. And this is where, for me, the military really helped me. When you have learned for 20 years to be disciplined, if I set my sights on something, it is probably 99.989% that I'm try everything to get there. That
Mm.
doesn't mean that I succeed all the time, but I really, really, really gonna try and not just give up when there's a little hurdle or a little obstacle in the way. And for me, my role oftentimes is not just to say, where are you? Where do you want to go? Let's find a path that we can agree to, but really be with people and hold their hand, because I mean, you know it yourself, Benaiah. We live in a time where we constantly get inundated from the outside, being told, you should do this and you should do this. And what was good yesterday is no longer good. And
Yeah.
here's the next shiny object and stuff. So to stay focused, I know where I am, I know where I want to go, and I have somebody who helps me along the path, so I have a good chance to get there. Because most things, if you ask somebody, how long did it take you to become successful? And the answer is, to say it a little jokingly, it was an overnight success that needed 20 years in the making, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You will rarely find anybody who said, oh yeah, I just snipped a finger, 2 months later, everything was in place. No, I don't know. And most people don't know anybody other than maybe a lottery winner.
Yeah. Literally. Yeah.
It happened overnight. And that's the problem. I find a lot of people, when I first talk to them and say, hey, what have you done so far before you came to me? They rattle down a long list of things. And I say, well, what happened? Why didn't you actually finish these things? And somebody told me, or I thought, and I read something and this and so. And so I really find we need to first work on, are you willing to commit to something? And not give up when it gets, when the going gets tough, as they
Yeah.
say. I mean, that's the first thing. And obviously, that makes your goal so important because it's much easier. If you have a really desirable goal, yeah, you can commit to that. If it's kind of like, yeah, it would be nice, but I'm not quite sure, it's really hard to commit. And you may be doing it now, but as soon as two other things happen, then they might look more
Yeah.
important or better or what have you, right? So that's the thing, and that's what I see in my role, helping people not only to set up the structure and identify what is their goal, but then really take them by the hand and guide them until they can say, okay, I've been walking this walk now enough time, I can do it on my own. That's always my goal. I want you to release you in the wild and you know how to do it, even if I'm not there every day anymore.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, this is really lovely. Yeah, a whole lot of things to get to learn there. Yeah, what are they doing now, and why didn't they keep to it, and are they willing to commit? Yeah, to it. Yeah, this is really amazing. And also, you have built a portfolio or out of states, across border. You even figure out how to purchase land in the US as a German soldier. What does that kind of unconventional thinking require?
Well, for one, you should see obstacles as a challenge and not something that is a barrier. But fundamentally, most people are not necessarily aware. And it really, I mean, also for an international audience in the United States, they are interested for anybody who wants to put activity into the economy. And you might like or not like the current president, but one thing that he is really good at is say, why don't you come and start business here? So this is actually one thing that I do with every client since 2015. So I don't need a president for that. The first thing we do is to say, I want you, like if you were my client, Benaiah, I would say, Benaiah, I want you to be the king of your own empire. So tell me, what is that empire going to be called? And you come up with a name, right?
Mm,
King Benaiah Empire.
yeah.
Well, then we go and say the King Benaiah Empire LLC is what we create first. So now we have a company. The company gets a business bank account. The company gets a brokerage account. The company gets a, what's it called, employer identification number, basically a registration with the tax authority. So that's the structure. And now it's not Benaiah who is investing. Yes, in a sense, yeah. But what is really investing is the King Benaiah Empire LLC.
Mm,
That's who's getting financing. That's who's owning the house. That's who's buying any kind of gold or silver. That's who's investing on the stock market. And like any business owner, I can teach Benaiah how to be a business owner. Just a little example for that. Most people, when they have to go to a bank because they want to get a loan, it feels a lot like you're begging the bank to give you the money. When you are King Benaiah Empire LLC, you go out, that's what I teach my clients to say, okay, hey, banks out there, and I know there are lots of you guys out there, I have an opportunity for you to make me an offer to finance an investment in my company.
mm,
Who has the best offer? And don't be shy. I'm accepting any proposal. I will review it, and then we see who gives me the best deal. And in real estate, we would say, and by the way, if you want to know what we are investing in, here is the house that we're planning to buy for the company. And then they can make offers. And you can probably feel just by the way I'm describing it, it's not begging. It's
yeah.
giving them an opportunity to provide a
Mm,
service. And keep in mind, if they provide the service of financing the house, we commit for 30 years to pay them interest and the money back.
yeah.
It's, like that's the same thing. I always say, think about it as if the bank is your employee. What does an employee have to do? They have to give you a good performance. And as long as they give you the good performance, like in this case, the money for the house, we pay them a salary.
Yeah.
And it's fair exchange. There's no begging or anything like that. Right? And
Yeah.
in cases, when you think about what else do I need, not just to get the money to buy the house, but somebody needs to manage the house. You and I don't want to do this. You're the king of the King Benaiah Empire, right? Like you're not doing
Yeah.
the dirty work. So we're hiring property management. Now, number one is the same thing. We say, hey, property management, we have an opportunity. Who has the best deal to offer us? But when they then start working, and we get a letter or an email or something from a tenant, and the tenant said, you own this house, but I constantly report something is wrong and nobody shows up. Guess what we do with the employee called property management?
Yeah, we'll put them on query out. Yeah, we get to it.
Yeah. We call them up and say, hey, we got a complaint about your performance, Mr. Employee Property Management. So we want to give you an opportunity to fix it, but you are now on probation. Same like you would if you're a business owner and you have an
Yeah.
employee. You don't throw him out right away. You give him a chance to fix it, but you already have made a little red marker. And if you get a complaint again, they're gone.
Mm.
Every employee, every employer, every business owner is running their business that way. So for me, besides helping you to do the investments in generating the income that you want to reach your time freedom point and so forth, the other part is to learn what kind of a mindset do I need to have as the King Benaiah Empire LLC owner? Who works for me? Are they working well? Are they helping me achieve my goal? Or are they rather in the way?
Yeah.
And if they're in the way, then you can say, hey, I had given this company A the opportunity to manage my assets. They didn't do so well, so here's a new opportunity. Who wants it?
Yeah.
Right? So
This
that's
is really
kind of
amazing.
what we do in the program is not just to help you to do the investments and find out exactly which investments get you to your goal, but also to develop an attitude that puts you in charge. That's if people in my program always say, and they kind of get tired of it when I say, remember, you are in charge. It's your business and you want the best for your business and ultimately out of that, the best for your family. So
Yeah.
run it accordingly. You have to run it well to make it successful.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much. Yeah, this is really robust and a whole lot to really learn from here. Yeah, thank you so much, Al. So you host a podcast called The Idea Investors in the Age of Sustainable Abundance. What does the abundance means to you? Not financially, but as a way of moving through the world.
Well, there's a couple of different things. Abundance, I believe what we are working towards or what's coming in our lifetime, you're in my lifetime, is we will probably see an abundance in energy. Right? Especially solar, I think, is going to be important. We will see an abundance in productivity. And what I mean by that, if you pay attention, all the new AI tools, some of which you and I, I'm sure we're using, but there's way more than we're not even aware of. And there's one thing coming, and we see the first little developments on that, and that is actually called physical AI, or some people also call it humanoid robots. Basically something that looks like a person but is a robot and has a brain that is basically artificial intelligence. And that will much faster than most people think lead to labor costs to go towards zero. Just take a quick example for a short calculation in your mind. If you have somebody that does a normal job 8 hours a day or 9 hours a day and get $50,000 a year, forget about all the other little details. He or she gets 50,000 a year. If you had work, a certain kind of work that needed to be done 24, you need 3 people. So we're now at $150,000 per year. And right now the estimation is that the robots will probably be able to work 22 to 23 hours a day because they need a little bit of charging and stuff like that. And a robot that does a certain repetitive job is probably going to be somewhere in the area of $30,000 to $50,000. So let's just say the robot is $50,000 one time, right? And then you have that robot, you paid one time 50,000 instead of 150,000 every year. Right. So if you go and say, well, this robot is probably like anything, like your cell phone, it's not going to last forever. Let's give it 5 years. I think that's 4 to 5 years is probably realistic. Okay, 4 years. That's $200,000 that these employees would cost you each, each, right? And the robot still costs you 50,000. That's why I'm saying in those 4 years, if you say the robot works 24/7, that's insane amount of hours, tens of thousands of hours for $50,000. So the hour will be 40 cents, 50 cents, 60 cents per hour. The actual cost that you have, even if you put a little maintenance and a little electricity in. So that's what I mean when you ask me, what does abundance mean? Anybody who has the need for employees, there will be 2 categories. One is where you physically have to do something. Like I saw one new robot company called Figure. they're currently running a live stream where 3 of their robots are sorting packages like at Amazon,
Yeah.
so that the machine actually knows which package goes to which
Mm.
truck to be delivered to the households. That's been running for a week now, and the robot's working 24/7 the whole week. And they're running it to see how long until the robot breaks.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty simple task, and it's really just a matter of how long can a robot do that. The other thing is anything that has to do with the screen and the keyboard. The robot is not only
Yeah.
better in doing it, you won't even need physically a robot. It's going
Yeah.
to be AI, and AI is going to do it better, more precise, much faster. I mean, I'm always blown away. I have written over the years many, many articles, and every once in a while I have a topic where I pull a bunch of articles together and say, well, I want to take the most recent information and my previous articles. I plug it all into Claude,
Yeah.
and then I give it a prompt and say, take what's in the articles plus the information I've researched and give me a draft on how a new article could look like. Within 1 minute, this thing has actually read all my articles.
Yeah.
And then it starts showing out. And so if you think about how long I took sitting in front of a screen, typing these articles and editing and formatting and stuff, the thing does it like that. So all the way back to your question, the abundance of energy combined with the abundance of labor combined with AI is going to increase productivity to such an extent
Mm.
that a lot of people will not be needed anymore. And sometimes people ask me, well, what does that mean for my life? And I want to say humbly,
Yeah.
I cannot really predict exactly what it means for your life. But what I am very sure about is if you look at two groups of people, those who are basically defined by their job, what they do, where they get up in the
Yeah.
morning, they go to work and they come home and they get money in exchange for their time. And those who have assets, like I teach people to build an
Yeah.
asset portfolio, get to the time freedom point, let the assets perform. Those with the assets will be, in my opinion, clearly better off than those that don't have assets. And it's also a matter of if the assets like we do are residential real estate. Ultimately, for me, as the owner of a house that is rented, it's not really that important if the person living there is getting the money by going to work or if they're getting the money from the government because their job has been eliminated and now their government is giving them universal basic income. They need to live somewhere, and I'm providing an asset that has
Yeah.
value. Now, if I don't have the asset, then I need somebody who is giving me a job or I'm out, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. So true.
Message is, yes, abundance is coming. So you have a relatively, if you haven't started yet, a relatively short time window, I think it's probably 10 years or less, during which you have to start getting assets. Because if you don't have assets, then you're in the other group who basically just sit there and have to wait what the government is going to do with them.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, I mean, I'm pretty old by now. I have not seen government doing a great job with that. So I
Yeah.
would
That's so
not
true.
want to depend on that, right? So I'm very happy and very privileged that I have reached my time freedom point. But I'm also, because of all of what I just said, I'm really motivated to help more people to get there or at least get on the journey. Because if you don't start pretty soon, this AI stuff is going to be like a
Yeah.
huge wave, like a tsunami, that either you're surfing it, you're on top, little surfer
Yeah.
on the wave, or you're just going to get crushed.
Yeah, so true, so true, and a whole lot of things you just make reference of. I think the way you just more like give an explanation to this, it just as though more like will I say time machine? You just make reference of it, just unveil. I'm like, what? This is going to be the reality, so that it's really really a whole lot. So out of the state of talking, investments sound complex and risky to most people. What are the three things most people get wrong about it, and what make it more accessible than the
The first thing I would say, and this is not so much relevant in real estate investing? It's a little bit. I can give you a quick little anecdote. I had an investor many years ago. She had a pretty expensive house in Los Angeles. She sold it, made a good amount of money, and wanted to reinvest it into other houses. And the best area at the time was in Ohio. So I showed her a whole series of different houses that I had already done the calculations that would really good income producing houses. And she looked at them one by one together with me on a Zoom call, just like what we are doing here right now, Benaiah. And ultimately she said, you know what? I cannot do it. I'm like, what's wrong with it? She said, they're all ugly. I'm like, hey, you're not moving in there. This is investment. It is not a matter of other. And she said, no, emotionally, I just can't do it. I want to own something that I'm proud of. Right. So but that's pretty rare. That has happened once in
Yeah.
20 years of helping people. Now, so that's one part of emotions. But the other part of emotions, when you're thinking, for example, investing in companies, is that we need to have either conviction or trust or both. I give you an
Mm.
example on that as well. I have been a long-term investor in Tesla. First, because I was fascinated about electric cars, and now because I'm fascinated by all the things that they are developing while they're still building electric cars. So for me, and this is just an example, I have investments in other companies too. You need to first ask yourself, what are the topics or the subject things that I'm really interested in? So you see here in the background the picture of one of
Yeah.
the planes that I used to
Yeah.
fly when I was in the military. So I didn't just fly these, I was also in the test team. And when you do testing, you really get to know the components inside out. And to me, that kind of triggered an interest in engineering. What does it take to make a machine work? And that fascination applies, for example, to Tesla. When I said, well, I grew up in Germany where car industry was a big thing, but they were all in internal combustion engine cars. And here is somebody who says we can make cars equally good electric with a battery. I was fascinated by that. Why am I saying this? The point is, I'm an investor in Tesla because I am so interested in this topic of technology that I don't mind learning about it every week, every month, every year. I could have probably been invested in Amazon, just for an example. But I really couldn't care less how they get a book or any kind of package from A to B. I know they're really good at it, but
Yeah.
it doesn't
That's
fascinate me.
okay.
Right. So number one is ask yourself, what are you passionate about or really interested about? Where you know I will always be probably to some extent interested in it. And that means the companies that fall into that category, you don't mind listening to their earnings report. You don't mind looking up the research. You don't mind checking something with AI. So you stay informed about that topic because it interests you. The fact that you also own stock in that company is just secondary. It interests you. Now, the other thing is when you have that, then you also want a number two, set a goal. What do you think can this company accomplish? And when you look for any company, it doesn't even matter whether that's the one you invest in or not, they start at some point, they have a goal, and the path is never a straight line. It's always kind of
Yeah.
like the wiggly line. Certain external circumstances, or they made a miscalculation, or the economy, or the inflation, or there's a war starting, what have you. So it's never a straight line. But if you say, I'm starting to invest here and it's a thing that I'm really interested in, let's say, in my case, I started investing in Tesla when they were at 150. And I
Mm.
am convinced still to this day that they can ultimately get to 5,000 a share. Well, so as long as I'm checking this stuff because I'm anyway interested and I
Yeah.
see that trajectory is still intact, I could not care less what happens in the stock market. That's, by the way, a little bit of an explanation between a trader and an investor. A
Yeah.
trader is constantly in and out, constantly listening, constantly the noise.
Yeah.
An investor says, I'm investing in something because I believe they can go from where they are to where they say they want to go, and I
Mm.
agree with where they want to go. So
Mm.
that's number two. You set a goal, and like some people, like Warren Buffett and another guy from Europe, Andre Costolani, they always said, buy something you're convinced of, take a sleeping pill for 10 years, and when you wake up, you're going to be happy, right?
Mm.
Because a 10-year time horizon is going to be way higher than whatever you pay. But what
Yeah.
people are doing, especially now with the internet, we constantly, every day, we hear noise about this stuff. The market is up, the market is down. AI is going to destroy the economy. AI is the greatest thing since sliced bread. This politic and this war and you name it, there is a million things. But if you can just turn it off and say, pretend to have a sleeping pill, I don't even want to hear it. That doesn't mean that you don't track and keep an eye on what the company that you partially own is doing, but you're doing it because you're interested in the topic, right? Remember, that's number one. I'm
Yeah.
interested in it. Now that I know that I'm interested in it, now I find the best company in that topic and I buy the stock and I set a goal, number two. And then number three is to say, okay, if nobody, I don't know anybody who invests to lose money. Everybody I know wants to make money.
Yeah.
So now the question is, okay, how do I build a portfolio? And that's number three. As soon as you say, I'm convinced about this company and I agree with the goal, you have to ask yourself, how do you build a pile of that company? So I call this, and I learned this from a guy named Tom Nash, it's called advanced DCA or dollar cost averaging. What does that mean? You say, I'm going to use $100 or whatever your number is every month to buy stock in this company. Like, let's say the example is Tesla. I buy
Yeah.
$100 worth of Tesla every month. And because I'm interested in it, I'm paying attention to it. And obviously, my hope is that it gets more and more and more and
Yeah.
more value. So at some point, it reaches a new all-time high, right? And so I keep buying, buying, buying. As we know, it's never a straight line. It's always a wiggly line.
Yeah.
When it falls, for whatever reason, it doesn't make any difference what the reason is. When it falls 20% from its last all-time high, like let's say it reached $100 worth, and now it goes down to 80. From then on, I'm paying double, $200 instead of $100 every month
Mm.
until it back above the 20% and keeps going up. Then I'm back to my 100. That's the one part. So when it's down, I get more. When it's going up, I get my regular little amount every month. And then the other thing is to say, when I went back last time to my regular $100 a month and it keeps growing more than 35%, you can look and ask yourself, is there something else that I would really like to invest in, but I don't have any extra money?
Mm.
Let's say I would say I love Tesla, but now the other thing I want to invest in is like Duolingo, the language learning company, right? Now, what can I do is when I have 35% gains from the last switch to my regular
Yeah.
thing, I sell a little bit, I take profit and buy some Duolingo.
Mm.
Now I have Tesla and Duolingo, and I'm tracking both of them the same way. And maybe in a few years, I have another good profit, and I take a little bit and say, now I want Benaiah King's LLC stock
Yeah.
because it became such a great company, and I buy a little bit of that. And ultimately, what you will find, I have found this for me, I have done exactly this. I'm never telling anybody to do anything that I haven't done myself. So I've done this in my stock portfolio, and I've found somewhere around 5 to 6 companies is about as many as I can handle that I want to spend time and not constantly sit in front of a computer looking at my portfolio. But everybody has to find out where is that number. So I have 5 companies that I'm invested in, and they're all things that I'm really interested in.
Yeah.
And
Amazing.
so I'm just letting that ride with my real estate. The biggest thing is that I have to have a team. Like I told you earlier, I'm in charge of my LLC. If you were an investor, you were in charge in your LLC. And as the owner of the business in the stock market, it's all taken care of. You just buy the stuff and it's running itself. But in real estate, the business owner is in charge that everybody
Yeah.
who works for us that we pay does a good job. So I check in with them once a month and check what's with the bank, what's with property management, what else do I need to pay attention to, anything about the tenants. That whole portfolio takes me about an hour and a half per month to check in,
Yeah.
right?
Amazing. This.
So you're basically building these structures and ultimately you get more and more used to it. And then you just basically have certain, I use a Google Calendar and I have certain things on my calendar that I check in on a regular basis once a month or once a quarter, just to make sure that I'm not missing an important change. But the interesting thing, just like I said, what I learned from the military and from when you asked me about the time freedom point, I said humility. The other thing is you have to turn off the noise when it comes to investing. There's so much noise out there. And a lot of the noise these days is to trigger your emotions. So, one example is people, especially the media, is trying to convince us that the market is a bubble and it has to crash because every bubble has to crash at some point.
Yeah.
Right? So what are they doing? They're basically trying to get you into a fearful position in your mind. And then one day the stock market drops 5%, and then they're gonna all at once gonna say, now the bubble is exploding downwards.
Yeah.
Everything is going down. Now you're already full of fear. And what do? You think, well, if everybody is selling, I probably need to sell too. Right. Right. What did Warren Buffett say? The best time to buy stocks is when blood is running down the street.
Mm.
So you wait until they've all sold and then you get some new because it's cheap.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Exactly the opposite. Why are so many people saying, I have never made any money in the stock market? Or why is it that there are almost 8,000 money managers? I don't know if you've ever heard this. There's 8,000 registered money managers, and less than 100 manage other people's money better than if you just put the money in the index like the S&P and go to bed and do nothing. Last thing I asked you, Benaiah, do you know who is the most successful investor in the world?
Warren Buffett.
No, he's very good, but he is not as good.
I can think of it now.
It's people that are dead for the last 20 years.
Oh, wow.
Right? When you actually analyze people that, and obviously this happens when some bank finds a stock market portfolio that hasn't been touched, and then they find out the owner is dead, and the heirs never really knew that that account existed. So it's been sitting there for 20 years. Those accounts have the highest performance of everything. And the lesson is don't touch it. Now, think about it. What did we say? Number one, you only want to do something that you're really passionate about and don't mind checking on. Number two, you find the best company in that area. And then number three, don't touch it.
Yeah.
I don't want to say be dead, but if you don't touch it, if you don't touch it for as long as you can hold out, and this is the trick, right? If you're dead, you're not influenced by all these emotions.
Yeah, by the emotions, by the opera. Yeah.
It just sits there. But so our task for number three is don't listen to the noise that is trying to trigger you, make you fearful, make you anxious, make you think, the world is ending tomorrow, which I think the media is trying to convince us of every day that the world is ending. And you just have to turn it out and say, my portfolio is stable. I know why I'm investing. I'm competent because I'm in something that I know stuff about. And number two, I can see that my companies are still performing in the direction that they need to go. So there's no need to do anything.
Yeah. Oh, this is really a masterclass. Thank you so much. A whole lot of things to really get to kind of learn from here and to piece out from this discussion. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. So from our audience who would love to reach out and how to consume more of your article or the materials to connect with you and to follow you, how can they reach out and where is the best platform?
Well, the best way is to go to idealwealthgrower.com, and then at the top right-hand corner of the homepage, there's a little button that says Discovery Call. Put my name into Google and it pops up all over the place. So there's plenty of different ways to get in touch.
Yeah, thank you so much, Azo. Thank you for bringing such clarity and generosity to Quito. Yeah, you're a reminder that time is the only asset that cannot be replaced, and that the economy independence is not a luxury but a decision. It's one every working person need to hear. My audience who would love to reach out, check the show notes. You're definitely going to see a link to easily reach out. Yeah, this has really amazing. So remember that financial freedom is not about having more money. It's about never having to sell your time again. Yeah, this has really been amazing once again. It's a pleasure and honor having you on the show.
Thank you, Benaiah.